We couldn't hear the timer very well in this game, and so our timings are a little bit all over the place. But this is a supposedly anyway 10-minute two-player game, 1 minute per turn game on gender. Enjoy.
What a knotty issue we have with gender. It's such a huge question of dualities and non-dualities. What are we actually dealing with when we say gender?
There's two issues here, isn't well, three issues, I guess. There's the biological, reproductive notion of gender, right? Sexual, the necessity for sex is to create variation. This is one thing. Then there is the cultural construct of gender, assigning characteristics and roles to people based, if not entirely, then largely on their genders, and falling into raising boys and girls in certain ways. So there's that. But then umbrellaing both of those is the eternal energy of the masculine and the feminine, right? The first division, if you will, one of the first divisions, if you like, of the void is into the masculine and the feminine.
It's an interesting dichotomy about the masculine and the feminine. We assign all sorts of gender, especially not in English. So languages like French and Italian and German are whacking gender into all sorts of things, and it's quite difficult really to unravel what's really going on when we say the divine feminine or the masculine and start to assign these things to different genders. Whereas in fact, when we look at gender in humanity, those divisions don't really seem to, well, perhaps they apply somewhat stereotypically, but they're so often broken within the stereotype. One wonders how useful it is really to have those divisions.
Divisions according to gender, yeah, it's the conflation of the masculine and the feminine with the man and the woman. It's a failure to recognize that the masculine and the feminine reside in both men and women, right? And that the biological necessity for having men and women necessitates certain physical differences, right? And so there are stereotypical physical differences. Women have more fat in their bodies. Women are generally shorter, weaker, and so on. Of course, you can always find examples of big, tall, strong women and short, weak men. Of course, that is the case. But broadly speaking, and so part of the gender assignation that has gone on is surely due to this biological thing. Because men are stronger, they do more physical labor, for example.
We've got some interesting things we think about gender, especially when you go to something like the yin and the yang, and they talk about the feminine and the masculine, where the masculine perhaps represents order and light and force, and the feminine actually can represent chaos and dark and negative things. So it's an extremely interesting thing. Perhaps it's unfortunate. That the feminine and the masculine are seen as separate rather than opposite ends of a scale in which we enjoy all sorts of overlapping ways of being, rather than saying masculine is one and feminine is the other.
As with any duality, it is what it is. The duality is the duality. The duality is one of the ways, subject and object, up and down, black and white, hot and cold, light and dark. These things are simply polarities that we use to make sense of the world. The difficulties arise when you start assigning virtuous or evil, whatever characteristics to these things. And traditionally, the dark is bad and the light is good. And so the yin and the yang, this is an interpenetrating thing, right? The symbol of the Tao is a symbol of interpenetration. And so the masculine energy, if you like, is the one which pushes, and the feminine energy is the one which yields and envelops. And there is, there is no yielding and enveloping without something pushing against you. There is no pushing without something to yield and envelop. They are one and the same thing, separated only in our minds and the ways and the ways that we act and we see them and assign values to them.
The yin and yang is a very ancient thing, but it doesn't mean it's right. It's not necessarily correct. It's not necessarily right to divide things or to imagine that we have polarities in everything. It's not necessarily a good idea to put things into polarities and to feel that gender actually exists in that manner. For example, we can consider that we're looking at perhaps a circle of being rather than a one end and an other end, and perhaps as a swirling sense of being we have masculine type of things and feminine type of things, and instead we're just going round and round and round within something like that, even a vortex of being. Gender even considered something that may not even be a permanent state of being. Human beings are fluid. They're fluid in what they feel. They're fluid in what they think they are. So as a social construct, rather than the biological one, as a social construct, gender may be something that is definitely not a polarity, but a fluid, changing, flowing thing.
Yeah, unity seems to be the thing that we're sort of dancing around here. The separation into the masculine and feminine is absolutely a construct, right? It is a mental construct of human beings in that way. It's an unity is amorphous. Unity doesn't have any boundaries and any membranes around it. There is no subject and object. There's no relationship, and so the polarizing, the separating into dualities is necessary for existence as we understand it, living as we understand it, awareness as we understand it. It's not real, but it's.
So polarities is a useful construct, but it's not necessarily always a good map for what is. Let's consider a female as being the whole and a male being a specialist part of a female. As we're told that the female is the basic pattern of humankind. So rather than one end and the other, we have one that is the whole and another that is part of the whole. Perhaps we can turn around things. We can break out from our thinking in polarities and open our mind to more subtle or more fluid ways of considering who we are and how we relate to each other.